Alright guys, so pretend you're me and you really like Aquaman, and you like him so much that you want to put him in a lot more of your videos like such, but the problem is you don't know how to 3D motion track. You gotta know how to do that. I mean, let's be real, you gotta know how to do that. So today I'm gonna teach you how to do that and put Aquaman inside your favorite videos, because who wouldn't want to put Aquaman in your favorite videos? Alright guys, welcome back to another T-God Tutorial Tuesday. Feeling a little bit under the weather still. If you follow my Twitter, you know what that's all about, but I'm willing to push on because you guys need a Tutorial Tuesday. It's not a day early for all you guys signed up for the Remind 101, but I think you guys can forgive me. I'm sorry. Anyways, before the video starts, I do want to announce that I will be away on vacation in New York next week, so I will not be able to post a tutorial for next week. So I'm asking you guys, if you want to be featured on this channel, I will upload your video to this channel for next week's Tutorial Tuesday. All you gotta do is make a short tutorial detailing something that you do that optimizes your workflow in producing videos here on YouTube. May it be editing, may it be recording, any sort of tip that helps you produce the content that you do more easy and more efficient. I would like to know. Make the tutorial, keep it short, 10 minutes probably most, and submit it to my email on screen there or to my Twitter. And yeah, if I like your submission, I will put you as the video for next week, and I'll link your channel, all that good stuff. It's a good way to get promotion to your channel, and I want to give back to you guys. So that's pretty much that. That's enough spiel. Let's go ahead and get into today's tutorial. So as you can see, I have After Effects open. This will be an After Effects tutorial. I'm using CC 2014 for this tutorial. You can use any edition of After Effects that you wish. However, I will be doing it in After Effects CC 2014 because that's the version that I have. 2015 is a little bit too uncompatible with the systems that I use, so I stick with the good old 2014. But that's besides the point. Today I'm going to show you how to motion track and put Aquaman inside your videos, because who wouldn't want to put Aquaman in your videos? Okay, so we're gonna start off here. I have a really nice clip. I took this with a club that I have at my school, and we're shooting for a short film. We didn't get it finished yet, but this is one of the clips that I really liked from it. It's kind of just like a chase scene, this really nice location near where I live, and I thought it came out really well. Now, the one thing that I did want to do with this is warp stabilize, so it wouldn't be so shaky. And I also thought it would be a nice clip to show you guys how to motion track on, given that the camera is panning. We do have two actors that are dynamically moving within the scene, and it's just basically an overall really great clip to show you guys how to motion track. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that right quick. So the first thing you want to do when you want to motion track is figure out what you're trying to achieve, right? So I want Aquaman to be right here. I want to stick him right in these bushes, right? Because Aquaman, yeah, that's what he does. He lurks in bushes. So that's where I want to have my Aquaman. Now we have to identify the clip. Well, this is a 3D panning camera, right? If it were just a 2D, and I'm gonna have another example. I'm gonna do this in this video as well. If it's just a 2D like this one, where the camera doesn't really move in 3D space, it's just wobbling around a little bit. That's easier to track, right? But this one's 3D. The camera is definitely moving, and over towards the end here, it starts to turn a little bit. The camera starts to turn. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to 3D motion track. Now the great thing about After Effects is that it actually comes with a 3D built-in camera tracker, and I can go ahead right here and I can click track camera down in the tracker menu. And if you don't see this tracker menu, you can go to window and then go click tracker, and that'll bring it up. Or you could right click your clip individually and click track camera right there. So you can do it either one of those two ways. The problem is that with many scenes that have actors or moving objects in them, right? The camera's moving, but we also have these moving actors. That'll mess up the automated solver. It'll see these and be like, oh, hey, that's part of the scene, right? And it'll try to incorporate that when it solves the camera, but since they're moving, it doesn't give any information about the camera's movement. It gives information about the character's movement, and it throws the track off. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a very rough mask, and we're just gonna get rid of these guys. Now, this does not have to be detailed at all. So I'm gonna duplicate this so I can have an original clip, but I'm gonna call one of these my tracking clip. So tracking data. That'll be our tracking data, and I'm going to name this one original footage. Alright, so now we have our original footage preserved, and we also have one for just using as tracking data, and it's throwawayable. We don't really have to worry about it. So I'm just going to kind of draw around my actors here, right there. And now I've drawn around our actors, and I'm going to hide the original footage because it's kind of subtracting from what we're seeing here. So there is our tracking data footage. Now, what we want to do is get rid of the actors, not solo them. So I'm going to click M with my tracking data layer selected, and that's going to bring up our mask. And what I'm going to do is, instead of adding it, I want to subtract it, so it'll get rid of them. So now you'll see that it's really nice. So we've got that, and we're just going to move along until they start to pop out of that mask, and then I will readjust. So foot starts to pop out there, very minimal, but I'm going to go ahead and click the stopwatch next to mask path, and I'm going to keyframe that as we move along. So I do see a little bit sticking out right there. And if you want to actually move the points and not move it as one entity like this, you're going to have to click out and then click on the layer again, and then you'll be able to move the points individually. Very odd. I don't know why it works like that, but it's just the way it works. So don't question it, kids. Just follow the rules. All right, and that looks good right there. And we're just gonna go wrong. It doesn't have to be a good mask at all. I mean, we can go way above the limits right here. We can get rid of all this. The only thing that's bad about making your mask too big is that you lose tracking data, right? So I'm covering up some of the leaves here that could be used to solve the camera, but I'm not too worried about it. And if you want to move the whole thing, just go ahead and click into the mask itself. That'll select all of that. So if you want to select individual ones, click the layer. If you want to select, if you want to move all of it, click the mask. So right there, and you can see our characters are masked out very well. And I start to pop out here, so I'm going to click my layer because I want to move individual points for this one and kind of get that going. It's going to be a lot more oblong right here. And then of course I'm going to go to the end of the scene and just really make it big. And we've got tons of data on the outside of this mask to really kind of complete our track, so I'm not too worried about taking up too much of this. And as you can see, it kind of gets a little bit insane here, and I'm just going to make this mask real big. And there we go. So as you can see, not a perfect mask, but it doesn't have to be. That's the beauty of this. It doesn't have to be. And there we go. So that's perfect. If you see black in there, don't worry, it's just showing the transparency. You can toggle that right there. So if your screen looks different, it's not a problem. Alright, so there we go. We have got our tracking data, and we've got rid of anything that could possibly confuse our 3D track. Now I'm going to go ahead and pre-compose this, because when we motion track or when we track our camera, it ignores any attributes we apply to this layer. And by pre-composing, we're basically effectively treating it as if it's been rendered out and then re-imported. So I'm going to move all attributes, that's including the mask, into this pre-composition, and I'm going to name this tracking data comp 1, I guess is fine. So there we go. Now it's considered a piece of footage. And now for all the After Effects knows that this mask is part of the source footage, right? It doesn't know that there's a mask in there, and it feels like this is just the footage as it is, and there's just a huge hole in it for some reason. But the actors are gone. That's the important part. So I'm going to go ahead and right click and click Track Camera. And what that is going to do is it's going to analyze all the data in this scene, and it's going to collect all that data, and then it's going to say, hey, let's turn this data and simulate what the camera movement is doing at each individual time in this video. So it's going to go ahead and solve that, and you may have to adjust some settings depending on what type of shot you have. So if you go down to advanced right here, solve method, either you have a typical scene, which mine is, it's very typical. You can have a tripod pan, so if your camera is not moving from its location, it's just rotating around and panning a scene, then you'd want to click that. And if it's mostly a flat scene, that kind of applies to what I have over here, right? It's mostly a flat scene. However, I'm going to show you guys that you don't want to 3D solve this. You just 2D solve will be fine for something like this. So as you can see, our solve is done, and when I click on our effect here, we have all these little pinpoints. And what these pinpoints mean is that these are tracking data points. So the solver has gone through and it's seen these points, and it's identified them, and it's used them to solve the camera. Now, as you can see down here, we haven't created a camera yet. We actually have to go and do that ourselves. So I can click right here and say create camera, and it'll create a camera from all the points that we have. So right here we have our camera, and it doesn't really change anything, well, because we haven't put in Aquaman yet. Let's go ahead and put Aquaman in and drag our layer in, and boom, there we go. We have Aquaman. Let's position right here, and we're done. But we're not. he's not being motion tracked. What is this shenanigans? I wanted some motion track, I put in some work, and now he's not being motion tracked. What's going on here? Well, first of all, Aquaman is not a 3D layer, so Aquaman's being acted as if he was a piece of paper slapped on top of this video footage, and that was that. If he wants to be inside the scene, he has to be made a 3D object, so he can be considered to be affected by the camera. 2D objects or 2D layers cannot be affected by 3D cameras. So let's go ahead and make him a 3D layer by clicking the 3D check mark right here. If you don't see this little box, you can press F4 on your keyboard, and that will toggle what displays on your layer properties down here. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and make him a 3D layer. That's great, except for now he's way back there. And I want him to be right here. Now, we could just move him through 3D space, but that won't be exact, and, you know, he's kind of, it looks like he's floating up in the air right now. He doesn't look very attached to the ground. You can see the stuff under his feet. He does not look like he's on the ground. So, in order to fix that, traditionally what I do is I go back to my 3D camera tracker layer, and I go ahead and I click and drag around points that I want him to be on. So these are all points on the floor, and I want his feet to be on the floor. So I'm clicking and dragging those. And now it shows like a little target. Well, I want him to go to that target, right? So what I actually have to do is right click in that center area right there, and I have to create a null. And that's what that's going to do, is create a null object. Let me rotate it so you can see here by pressing W on my keyboard, and then kind of meandering it around here. Where is my null? I don't think oh, it's actually very small. Let's go ahead and scale it up here. All right, well, there's our null. Nothing fancy, it's just a traditional null like you would expect. So I'm gonna kind of orient it how I would like. This isn't important, you don't have to orient it. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. All right, so there's our null. I don't know if you can see, but it's motion track there. But I want Aquaman to be in that location. The null's great and dandy, but a null's just a null at the end of the day. It doesn't really do anything. It's just a reference object. So I want to take Aquaman and move him to the position of the null. Now, first we have to consider, well, what are we moving to the null? If you select a layer, you'll see that the center point is this little point at the torso of Aquaman. Now, if I move Aquaman to the null now, it'll move his torso to the null, but the null's on the floor, so we would basically effectively be putting his waist at floor level. Now, if I want to anchor his feet at floor level, I click Y on my keyboard to go to the pan behind or anchor point tool, and I'm going to go move his anchor point towards his feet. Right there. You can hold Control to snap it to any of the vertices right here. So I'm going to hold Control and snap it to his feet. Is that his? No, that's not. Well, not sure what's going on here. Come on, Aquaman, behave. Right there. There we go. Okay. Now it's at Aquaman's feet. So now what we can do is go to our tracking null and bring up the position by pressing P on the layer. And we're basically going to select the position property. I'm going to hit Control C, or Command C, I believe, on Mac, to copy that. And then I'm going to go to Aquaman, where be, there you are. I'm going to hit P. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to paste using Control V, or I guess Command V on Mac. And you can see that Aquaman is now standing on the floor and that the null was on. So Aquaman, you have successfully made it into our clip. Bravo! Now what you can do from here is you can resize him. Traditional method, just click and drag, or you can bring up the position right here, or the scale right here, sorry, and you can scale him up, make him super large Aquaman, but I don't think that fits the scene very well. I mean, Aquaman doesn't fit the scene in general, but he's just kind of there. And of course, you can move him. Just keep in mind that if you move him up, it defeats the whole purpose of doing the whole null, right? And, keep him on the floor. So I'm going to move him side to side. That keeps him on the floor, just moves him that way. And of course, you can rotate him using your rotate tool, or by pressing W on your keyboard, you can bring up that tool, and you can rotate him. So now what we have is, well, we have Aquaman in our scene. Now I'm going to go ahead and RAM preview this, and I'll be right back. Alright, so here we are. And, yeah, there's Aquaman.
Keep close, keep close.
He's looking pretty snazzy. So that's all great and dandy, but we still have this tracking thing right here. And I would really like to see the actors, because that's the whole point of this clip. Otherwise, I just would have not bothered with actors and taken this nice scenic clip by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide our tracking comp, and I'm going to unhide our original footage. And lo and behold, there we have our regular footage with Aquaman there, and he's looking fine as ever, like you do. Aquaman always looks fine, but as you can see, the scene is motion blurred because, well, the camera's being blurred because it's moving, but Aquaman's just still clear as day. I mean, look at that. Must be a Superman eliminating all blur. He has like anti-blur zone. So how do we get rid of that? Well, the easiest thing to do is literally just to click our layer and then go to the, the motion blur property and click it. That's essentially it. As you can see, he's actually he's not. Oh yes, that's correct. We have to click and enable motion blur on the entire composition. That seems like a little bit much, actually. And I think that's too much motion blur. We can go ahead and tone that down by going into our composition settings right here, composition settings, and going over to advanced and doing shutter angle. I shot this at a very high shutter because I wanted to keep a choppy feeling. So I'm gonna go ahead and lower this to, gosh, 50, I think would do. Yeah, 50. And the lower you get that, the less the motion blur. So as you can see, he matches the motion blur pretty well. Yeah, he matches the motion blur pretty well. Now, if this were a sunny day, I could basically duplicate this layer, right? Duplicate it, and then I could rotate it on its face right here, make it black and blur it a little bit, and that would be a shadow. So that's pretty much how you do that, and of course match the shadow to the angle, and then you're good. That's how you motion track, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty simple once you do it. It's pretty much the same thing each time. Just got to make sure you got to eliminate all moving objects, and you're good to go. So on to something a little bit easier. I kind of started off on the hard hand here. Let's go do something a little bit easier. So as we can see here, this is just a clip from a music video I shot for a class at school. And we basically have my friend writing on a piece of paper. It was for chemistry, so that would explain all this chemistry mojo. But that's not important. What we want to do is we want to put Aquaman on this sheet because Aquaman is obviously the best thing that's ever happened to this earth. So we want to go to our tracker menu, and instead of clicking track camera right here, we want to actually track motion. As you can see, we got a nice little track point right here as soon as we click that. And of course, your footage has to be selected before doing anything in the tracker menu because it needs to know what you're tracking. So we're going to be tracking this one, so that layer was selected, and then I click track motion. Now we got our point. But we want to track rotation, so that gives us a second point. You can't track rotation with only one point. You need 2 to be able to detect that stuff. So hold on, let me zoom in here. So yeah, the reason why we have 2 is if the footage rotates, right, these 2 move in reference to each other, so that's how it gets its rotational data. You can't do that with 1. So that's pretty great and dandy. We also want to track our scale there, and that looks like pretty much it. We do want to have a target for this because we're exporting our tracking data not to a camera but to an object. So I'm going to export our tracking data to a null because nulls don't mean anything and they're useful for holding a lot of stuff. So we're going to have it hold our tracking data because nulls are good for that. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what this box is. So this outer box is basically how far it'll detect the little box moving. So little box detects the pattern, right? So if I wanted to detect the pattern of this 1 right here, I would have to make the box big enough to capture the 1. But that's not a very good tracking point, and I'll show you why in a second. But basically the idea is that the inner square captures a pattern, and it tries to follow that pattern as the clip moves on. So that's how it tracks. The outer box right here basically says how much that pattern can move before it loses the track. So ideally you could make it as big as the thing right here and it would just track it anywhere in the scene, but that takes forever to track. So you want to try to nail down how fast do you think the pattern is moving and kind of say per frame it's not going to move outside this box. So I'm going to go ahead and find a high contrast point because the trackers rely on contrast, right? So this is a very high contrast point, this corner. You want to go for corners. So this corner is very identifiable. So is this one right here, but not so much. So I'm going to go ahead and use this corner. The pattern is about, I'd say the pattern's about that big. And I don't think it's going to move that much. I think it's probably going to move that much at most per frame. And now we got to do the other one. So ideally, you don't want to put these tracking points close to each other, right? because if you put them close to each other, if you put them like right next to each other, even the slightest movement, right, will throw the rotation off. So the wider you get them, the more fine control your track has over rotation. Position is just kind of whatever, but over rotation, you have a lot more fine control. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this high contrast corner right here. And oh, it looks like we actually moved our thing outside of the, I don't think I've ever had that happen before. If you do that, just Control Z and keep the center point with the boxes. So our pattern is about that big, and I don't think it's going to move any more than that in our scene. So now we got that. There's no solve camera, it just has to track it frame by frame. So what I'm going to do is go back down to the tracker menu, and I'm going to click track forward, or analyze forward rather. But first I'm going to select our target, and that is of course going to be our null. Alright, so that's our tracking null. And options are just kind of, I don't think you need to mess with these, to be honest. This is kind of just a very special use. But let's go ahead and track forward, shall we? And you'll see, since we picked those high contrast corners, it does a pretty good job and it doesn't really get off track. So if we're lucky, it'll make it this whole way through the clip without them moving off. Now let's pretend they did move off, right? You would basically click stop and go to the last frame where it was good, and then go one forward when it started veering off, and then just put it back on that corner and then keep tracking forward and rinse and repeat. If it does go off again, you can correct it and keep moving forward. So yeah, I started here, so after this point it doesn't really have any data. You see it's not moving with it. So I'm going to go to about where I started, and I'm going to click track backwards. The reason why you just don't start tracking from the first frame is that maybe the first frame isn't the best for selecting your pattern points. So start from a point that's good and it clearly shows the points you want to track, and then track forward and backwards from there. So that looks like it'll be pretty much done right now. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is drag in Aquaman. Oh, sorry. I missed a step. We need to go ahead and click apply. And we're going to apply X and Y. And that's going to apply it to this null. And now you see our null moves with the scene. So it's moving, it's moving, it's moving. And our null is perfectly tracked. Now, what we can do is we can drag in Aquaman. And you can make him a 3D object if you want to line him up. So let's make Aquaman a 3D object right here. Oh, I made the null a 3D object. That's a bad idea. Make Aquaman a 3D object. That way you can make him look like he's a part of the sheet right here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. And there you go, Aquaman. Congrats. You have made your way onto a bunch of chemistry notes. And I think in order to match the scene, I'm going to make them black and white. So I'm going to do a hue and saturation. And I'm going to drag him onto Aquaman, and let's make him look like he was sketched on. I'm going to lower saturation right there. And Aquaman, you were sketched on. I'm going to lower your opacity right here by hitting T. And it looks like Aquaman was sketched onto these notes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Aquaman layer, and I'm going to make his parent the null. And that'll make sure that any transformation that the null has, Aquaman will have as well. So now you can see that if I ran preview, Aquaman is now on our notes. Believe it or not, he found his way in there. That devious devil, he. So yeah, I've basically showed you how to make Aquaman infest every living piece of video footage that you own. This can be applied to video game footage as well, don't worry. Same concept applies, although it's a first-person game, you'll probably have to use the 3D camera tracker. This 2D tracking method won't really apply all that much, but I've showed you both methods, so you're basically dual wielding any possible situation you could come across. And yeah, I don't think there's anything more to say. That's how you motion track. You can go ahead and render out these clips and use them for whatever you want. I don't know, maybe your class project maybe your teacher really likes Aquaman. You'll gain some brownie points with him or something. Yeah, I think that's been enough Aquaman infested video for us today. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this episode of TGOD Tutorials Tutorial Tuesday. Each week I'm showing you guys how to improve your craft and optimize your workflow here on YouTube. So that is a way to optimize your workflow using camera tracking. It's pretty much the same dealio. The more you do it, the better you get, the faster you get, all that good stuff. Hopefully it'll help you create better videos here on YouTube. But yeah, every Tuesday I'm showing you guys how to do a whole bunch of stuff here on YouTube, whether it be YouTube tips or the Adobe suite. It's a big range here, so I'm sure you'll find something that will help you out and tickle your fancy here on the channel. So I encourage you to subscribe if you like this sort of stuff. It'll basically push all my newest videos into your subscription feed, so you don't miss them. If you want to be notified a day early and get access to these videos a day early, you can text the code shown right down here to the number provided on your phone, and that will sign you up to receive text messages with a link to these videos or these tutorials a whole day earlier, so you can get access to that, given that I'm not sick or have any medical illness like this week. But yeah, you can also click there and you can sign up with your email and stuff. It's easy. I make it easy for you guys, don't worry. If you want to view all of my Adobe After Effects tutorials in one little convenient playlist, you can click up there. It'll just autoplay all my tutorials. If you want to study up on this program, learn all that you can do with it, I encourage you to click that link and play through all the videos there. It's a really great way to kind of make yourself a better video editor or a compositor or whatever you want to say. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All my social media is down there. Follow me on Twitter. If you mention me on Twitter, I will mention you back. That's just how it works. You give me your time of day, I give you mine. I'm trying to get to 5,000 followers on Twitter by the end of this upcoming summer. And yeah, if you want to go and follow, I would duly appreciate your guys' support with that. But that said, I do look forward to viewing your guys' submissions for Tutorial Tuesday next week. Basically submit it to my email or to my Twitter, make them on YouTube as unlisted, and yeah, basically just send me the unlisted video. If you want to make it public, you can make it public. I don't care. Whatever you want to do, just don't make it private, because then I can't open it and share it with me. And yeah, you could be featured in next week's Tutorial Tuesday. So that's pretty much that. I will see you guys. Actually, I won't see you guys next Tuesday. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a wonderful day. I will be daily vlogging on my vlogging channel. Sorry, that was just kind of thrown in there at the last second. I'll be daily vlogging on my vlogging channel while I'm in New York. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, keep creating. Peace.